So, hey, Todd, it's back to school. We've got more connected devices in our lives than ever before, including tracking devices like AirTags. I'm a parent. I'm exposed to the network of a lot of other parents. And I found myself in the past month on more than one occasion have a parent say, it says on the box, these AirTags aren't for kids, they're for luggage. But I've
Right.
had parents tell me basically, you know, I get some great peace of mind by not following us on the box, by putting it in the backpack. And I'm thinking, okay, I can appreciate as a concerned parent the importance of taking care of your children, wanting to protect them. And I also appreciate as a risk professional that everyone has a different risk tolerance and there's never a good option. Like this is a hard decision. I don't know really the right answer, but
Sure.
one thing I sense that made me want to talk to you is that I don't think that the list of pros and cons for different options are well understood. If I Google it, I just kind of get a balanced generic response. But as you know, I've been studying privacy controls for 3 years, and I've read this extreme book, but
Right.
that's extreme. Like, so that's not for everybody. But I've also read the beginner's book,
hmm
and like my spidey senses are going off, but I still have trouble distilling it down and articulating the key points. And that's why I'm
Yeah.
wondering if you could just help me out here in my next conversation as a privacy lawyer in tech. Like what comes to mind
Sure.
for you as your elevator pitch and your key points to help parents?
Sure. Sure. Well, the first thing I have to say is, anything we say today is my opinions, not necessarily my company's opinions. You
Of
know,
course.
but my kids grew up in an age where this technology wasn't available. Um, but we still had helicopter parents back then.
Yeah.
Um, there's always ethical and moralistic issues, and let's put that to the side for right now. But there are some security and privacy issues that parents need to think about when making a decision whether or not they're going to, I guess, AirTag their kid, using it as a verb now, not just a noun.
Yeah. Well, it's a real thing. Like I'm seeing
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So, AirTags, Apple's official position is they don't store a location history. You can only see it when it's real time. But does that mean they actually aren't storing a location history? We just can't see it. And other types of AirTags exist. Tile. There's other different ones that may provide a location history, and that's a level of concern because just like any location history, if you have a real time history of where your child has been over time, and you're starting this off from a young age, that's creating a pretty big footprint for your kid at a very young age. But more than that, you're providing a real time, you're providing yourself a real time picture of where your child is at any point in time. But the problem is that's coming through your account. And as those of us in the security and the privacy industry know, that probably 80% of data breaches are caused by human error. And
It's
people
not the
always
technology.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. People are saying, "Oh, I got hacked. Someone got into my Facebook account or my Apple account or whatever." And if in fact you make a mistake, you get phished, you do get hacked. Somebody has real time information as to where your child is now at any given point in time. And so the security risk isn't necessarily by the use of the device, but the fact the device actually exists, and now somebody else has your phone, has access to your Apple account, and they can know exactly where your child is. It kind of goes further than that because frequently parents share the data. They both have access to that data of where their child is at any given point in time. And parents sometimes get divorced. They separate. And that access is still there. And if a parent is leaning towards a parental kidnapping, this certainly gives them good information as to where to find the child at any given point in time. So, there is risk to having a real time tracking device on your child.
I think that's
Honestly,
huge because I've
yeah,
tested access controls for 7 years.
yeah,
So first of all, it's a chain with different components, and you're only as strong as your weakest link. And even a great company with a great product, like it's about the configuration. And so even if it's low probability, that's high impact. If now
yeah,
someone like maybe I never thought about, oh shoot, someone, due to a misconfiguration or an error on my part or an error on the vendor's part or anything else,
Right.
wow, the location of my child, that high value data is in someone else's hands. I never thought that could happen, but it's like, as a risk professional, even if it's a black swan, even if it's a very low probability, would it be worth it if that did happen? Because now that could be weaponized against you in a pretty frightening way. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, you need to balance that. There's frightening reasons I want an
You
AirTag.
do,
So
you do. But I think peak parents like have to ask themselves, is why am I doing this? You know, you made a very
yeah,
interesting comment. You said parents said, I sleep really well knowing that I have this ability to see where my kid is at any point in time.
and it's like
Um,
I'm looking at the warning, and
yeah,
I'm not even really contemplating why it's there. But oh, I get comfortable because now I know where my kid is. Because I mean,
but that's a problem though,
yeah,
because I think it's providing people a false sense of security. And let me explain why I'm saying that. So again, we're talking specifically about AirTags, and they're a great device. I use them. I
me
love them.
too.
Um, but okay, so let's say you want to find your kid if he gets lost. Well, AirTags only operate if they're within another Apple device. They have to be able to connect with another device to broadcast their position. They don't do it on their own. So if your child's lost in a forest, it's not going to help you
Mm.
unless they randomly have to be within a certain number of feet of another hiker, and it's not a very wide circle. So, is that where you're using it? Second of all, if my child gets kidnapped, I can track them down. Well, that may be a problem too, because AirTags have anti-stalking features. So for instance, if the kidnapper has an iPhone and your child has an AirTag, within a very short period of time, they'll get a notification that they're traveling with an unknown iTag. The kidnapper will. They'll get a notification because that's a part of anti-stalking features of it. Is if there's a unknown AirTag traveling with you, your iPhone is going to tell you. So instantly, the kidnapper is going to get a notification that, hey, this kid's got an AirTag on, which allows
Wow.
you to be able to discover and disable the device, and that doesn't do you any good. And so, I think it leads with a false sense of security. So parents have to ask themselves, why exactly am I using this? Am I really going to be able to get the benefit of what I think I'm getting, or am I just leading myself to a false sense of security about how I'm using this on my kid?
So we've talked about the problem of unauthorized access.
Hmm.
That can be a challenging problem for any computer system. But
Sure.
I think another key point that I think I've heard you mention is um, it's high value data, and you can tell a lot about a person by where they've traveled. So could you
Yeah.
kind of unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, and so it's currently less of a concern with an AirTag because you can't go on your iPhone and say, hey, show me exactly all the history of where my AirTag has been. Doesn't work that way. It's tracking
Okay.
in real time.
Yeah.
Um, but again, other devices might track that history. It might provide a tracking history, and again, just because you can't go in your iPhone and see where your AirTag tracking history is doesn't mean it's not necessarily being stored someplace. The point with that is, and not just with your children, but also with yourself, is if you have tracking history about you and where you go, and remember, your kid's going to be with you for a fairly significant portion of that day, and so if you're tracking your kid, you're tracking yourself.
Oh,
Okay.
that's interesting.
But on top of that, if I have somebody's tracking history, I can look at it, and sometimes you could tell what illness they have based on the visits to different doctors' offices they've gone to. I can tell where they live and where they go to work because of the frequency in which they visit certain locations. I can potentially tell if they're being unfaithful to their spouse because, again, frequently timing, duration when they visit certain locations. There's a tremendous amount of very intrusive personal information you can figure out if you've got a real-time history of tracking data around any given individual. So again, if you're using a device that has that, then do you really want to start that at such a young age for your child and having that data be out there?
We hear about
Outstanding.
metadata being valuable, but it's hard to
Yeah,
conceptualize why. But when you say well, you can tell what doctors that you're visiting, it's like, wow, that's pretty,
sure.
that really hits home.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think one last thing to think about, from my perspective um, is there are some moralistic and ethical issues, and I guess I got to bring this up. My dad was a
Helicopter
child.
parent.
Yeah, well, my dad was a child psychiatrist on top of it,
Oh,
and so I,
nice.
I, I fortunately, they weren't helicopter parents. Of course, I grew up in the age where, you disappeared after breakfast and came home when it was getting dark. But you know, this can impede a couple of things. Number one, there is the fact that it can impede a child's independence, or not necessarily independence, but ability to learn to become independent. Is because they know that parent's available at any given point in time, they they don't need to learn to become independent. They've got that electronic leash at any given point in time. And second of all, once your kids are old enough to understand that you are tracking them 24/7, 365, that can lead to some really big trust issues with kids. And can damage that relationship between child and parent. So there are some things that are damaging. I guess it comes down to, again, is risk benefit. There are benefits, no question whatsoever. There are benefits to air tagging your kid. I can't say there aren't any. I can say there are a lot of risks. There are a
Well,
lot of
and this
risks.
one, I think the likelihood in that calculus is pretty high. You're going to have trust
Yeah,
issues with your kid if you're surveilling them to this degree and starting at this age, like kidnapper, divorce,
yeah,
my digital exhaust and permanent record, fine, black swan. But
yeah,
it's more likely than not, or like that's pretty moderate
yeah. That's
likelihood
a big
of
one.
a deeper issue. That's really interesting. Wow.
Yeah, it's a big one. I think what it comes down to is if you are going to use these types of things, as a parent, think about the risks and the benefits before you do it, and think seriously about the risks and benefits. Am I really getting a benefit? Oh, my kid might get lost in the woods and I can find him. No, you really can't. So there's really no benefit there. So what are you doing? But second of all, if your kids are old enough to understand what's going on, and I'm not talking 2-year old, 3-year old, 4-year old, 6, 7, 8, they may be. Have a conversation with them. Talk to the kids. Tell them why you want to do this. Tell them it's for their safety. Tell them the reasons. Tell them, bring them into the discussion, and so they can understand, and maybe set some limits that, okay, when we're home or when you're out with your friends or whatever, we won't track. We'll turn off the tracking, or disable it or whatever. And I guess one of the things that popped into my mind is kids lose stuff. So you better stock up on iTags, AirTags. They are going to lose things, and that's an expensive thing to lose.
Yeah, you add that complexity, you add another risk factor. Well,
Yeah,
Todd, I think that really helped distill down the key points. I think I can
sure.
think of a specific family where AirTags are a good fit, but I can
Yeah,
think of maybe the majority or others where, you know, maybe it's not, and maybe it's their decision, but I'm hopefully these points help. So I think that's great, and appreciate your time.
yeah. Great to talk with you, Steve.